Now those are some big ass cats. Welcome, dear bookworms. This is Vasil, the backwater librarian, the booktuber who helps you rediscover worthy books from your childhood. In this context, we'll be looking today at a complete German edition of the fairy tales of Brothers Grimm. This video is inspired by a subscriber of mine who gave me the idea to revisit books from my childhood and see how I will perceive them now that I'm a grown-up person. So I thought to myself, hey, I remember enjoying Grimm's fairy tales as a child, so why not purchase a complete edition of those fairy tales? Also, this is one edition which would look very pretty on a bookshelf, and reread them, revisit them, and see what type of enjoyment I can get out of them. I know that my English and pronunciation isn't perfect even in my scripted videos, let alone in a spontaneous video like this. This is why you will find a complete English transcript, and as this is a German edition after all, I think I will also add German subtitles as well. So, as I said, I decided to purchase a complete edition of the fairy tales of Brothers Grimm, and being able to read German, I thought, hey, what better way to enjoy these tales than in their original language. I ordered the book from a local book dealer here in Bulgaria, specializing in importing foreign language books. The book was not that expensive, around 35 leva. That would make like 17 to 17 and a half, maybe like between 17 and 18 euros, and roughly the same amount in dollars. The title reads Grimm's Märchen, or Grimm's Fairy Tales, and then we have the info that this is a vollständige Ausgabe, a complete edition. We have some good decoration on the front cover. Pretty, I would say pretty beautiful, pretty nicely gilded. I'm not sure how long this will last, but as long as it does, I think it will be beautiful to have this on your shelf. And I mean, even if it does fade away a bit, I don't think it should be that much of an issue. So yeah, beautiful decorations, like very conservative, very old world, very bookish decorations there. And then we have the info that the book has been richly illustrated by a certain Otto Ubelode. And at the bottom we have the publisher, Anaconda Publisher. We'll come to that in a minute as well. Yes. Let's check the spine. So, yep. Again, Grimm's Fairy Tales, complete edition, Anaconda Publisher, and then the back is completely bare. So the book is nicely sized. I think this is like the European standard for hardbacks. It's not too big, it's not too small. The dimensions, if you're interested, are exactly 15 and a half by 21 by 5.5 centimeters, or that would make it 6.1 by 8.3 by 2.2 inches. Yeah, so nicely sized book, and it is not that heavy. I mean, you can handle it pretty nicely. It's not an overly heavy book. The book is part of Anaconda's so-called leather-bound collection, but I'm pretty sure that this is no genuine leather here. For that price, I'm almost certain that it is faux leather, but even so, I think this will last at least a lifetime. It's an overall very solidly built book, and it should take like the day-to-day ravages of reading no problem, I would say. There is still something which I want to mention, the elephant in the room, if you'd like. So, you may not know this, but usually, if not always, the hardback or hardcover books by this particular publisher, being on the budget side, understandably have glued binding. So not sewn binding, but rather glued binding. What in the world is that, like a glued binding? Well, guys, that means that the pages we have here, they are simple sheets, separate sheets of pages, and are glued onto this spine right here. They are not sewn together. Let me try to illustrate that for you. So I'll open the book like this, as it should be opened. Let's say I'm opening it, and now you can see like the spine. Of course, there is like an internal cardboard spine, I would say, right? They are not like glued onto the external spine, like let's say a paperback where you have one single spine and it gets creased and like broken in, etc. Here the spine which gets broken in is the so-called internal spine. I don't know if that's the term. That's how I've decided to call it. Yeah, but they are simply sheets of paper which are glued onto it, similar to what you would have in a paperback. Let me show you a sewn binding for a book with a sewn binding for comparison's sake. So guys, this would be my ESV study Bible, just to compare the two. So this is heavy. You can see it right here as the, let me try to zoom it, as the spine has split a bit. Yeah, now you can see it right there. You can see how it has these little indentations right there. These are the so-called booklets. So they are like little booklets which are sewn together, and this is how like these many booklets are then stitched and then glued together here, because the spine has somewhat chipped off. You can see these like little indentations. So that is how the booklets look like. So there's nothing wrong with glued binding per se. Yes, it's not as reliable and long-lasting as sewn binding, but I think that both would last for a lifetime and more, even especially when the book is nicely made, such as this one. I know that some like high-end and coveted books especially here on BookTube, like the Penguin cloth-bound classics, are notorious for having glued binding and are notorious for not laying flat when opened. I'm happy to say that this is not the case with this edition. I can open it wherever I want and it remains open. This is a feature with these hardbacks by Anaconda. I really like that fact, to be honest. I really like it. I think it's due to the flexible inner spine and the very nice, very flexible paper. Okay, let's check out the publishing details a bit. The publisher is Anaconda Publishing, or Anaconda Verlag in German. Not the best name for a publisher now, is it? I've never liked this name, to be honest. It's a good publisher though, which publishes some contemporary German books, but also many German classics like these fairy tales, for example, but also like what have you, Goethe, Schiller, Hoffmann, like Ernst Hoffmann, my favorite German writer. Yes, so somewhere along the way, this Anaconda publisher was bought out by Penguin Random House, as it states here as well, for better or worse. So there's that. Yeah, let's check the date of publication. So we have 2015 and 2023. I think that the very first print run of this book was in 2015. I know that there is there was an older edition. There is also a non-leather bound edition as well, which has the exact same contents as this one, but the cover looks different. It's much more colorful. I'm not sure I like it. I rather prefer this classical style of front cover. Looks much prettier in your hand and on a bookshelf. So yes, but this particular copy, I think I'm pretty sure it's part of the second print run in 2023, from 2023. So it's a rather freshly printed book, let's put it that way, and I'm looking forward to having it and enjoying it for years and decades to come. Here we have the ISBN. I'll drop it in the video description below, and I'll also drop some links, maybe an Amazon link to this particular edition, and then also some links to free ebooks of Grimm's fairy tales, both in German and English. I'm pretty sure there are good free ebook editions out there, which you can simply download and read. If, however, physical books are your thing, then if you do read German, I would definitely recommend this edition to you. But if you cannot read German and rely on English, then there are definitely good English editions as well. So I'll check that out and we'll paste you all the details. Check it out in the description below the video. With that being said, let's concentrate again on this edition of ours and check what the text which is contained here is based upon. As we saw, this was printed in 2023, but we know that Grimm's fairy tales originate from the first half of the 19th century. So yeah, we have here an explanation that this is a complete edition made according to the original editions from 1812 and 1815, and they contain 444 illustrations by a certain illustrator Otto Ubelode. So we have some more info here in fine print. It says that the children and house tales, or children and home tales, by the brothers Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm were first published in 2 volumes, the first one being published in 1812, containing 86 tales, and the second one being published in 1815, containing 72 tales. They were published in Berlin. The illustrations are by Otto Ubelode, and they were first published, let me put it that way, in 1906 in a certain edition by a certain Rob Riemann, which was published by Turm Publisher in Leipzig. So yes, there is about 100 years time span between when the text was published and when the illustrations were published. So that's something to have in mind. Not that it affects the book in any way, or not that it takes from its worth, but it's something to have in mind. Nevertheless, I find it great that the text, so it's based on the first edition ever of the fairy tales, on the first 2 volumes, volume 1 in 1812 and volume 2 in 1815. We know that during the lifetime of the authors, these fairy tales went through quite a few editions and renderings. So from 1812 up until 1857, if I remember correctly. So through the years, some fairy tales were added, some were taken out, others were changed up a bit, revised, etc. So that would be more of an info for, like, how should I say, German folklorists or like experts in the field. As a reader, it's good to know that this is the very first edition that you hold in your hands, and I think for me personally that's more than enough info. Yeah, so a short word on the authors of this book, like the brothers Grimm. Who were these guys in the first place? So my history of German literature is a bit rusty, I have to admit, but I do remember that these were 2 brothers who were active in the first half of the 19th century. They studied and worked in Kassel. That would be a town in central Germany. They were mostly interested in German language, literature, and folklore. At the time, they were most widely known for writing the first German grammar. So that was like their magnum opus. And the fairy tales were actually their side project, if you could put it that way. They collected them by going through old literature, like, I don't know, 17th, 18th century literature, maybe even earlier, where they found these tales sprinkled through those old books. Then they reworked them. I think it was mostly Jacob Grimm who like reworked them in this classical like fairy tale style, and they collected them here. Another source for these fairy tales was, of course, the oral one. I believe that, as I said, like they were mostly active in and around the city of Kassel. I believe that it was there that they also collected. They collected that part of the stories which came through the oral tradition. So mostly through their friends and acquaintances who would retell these stories to them, and then Jacob and Wilhelm would jot them down and then like rework them in, as I said, this classical fairy tale style. And so they ended up collecting them, as we saw, like initially in 2 volumes. So in this edition of ours, as we saw, like 86 tales and 72, that makes up 158 tales. I'm not very good at math, but I believe I got that right. So 158 tales in here. Yeah, I mean, it's a substantial book. I think it will be an enjoyment. Let's see how long this book is. So almost 1,000 pages, 943 to be exact. At the end you have this the contents, of course, but what's interesting is that the contents are not ordered by page numbers, right? Let me see where they start. So Inhalt in German, that means contents. So they are not ordered in by page numbers, but by alphabetical order. So that's something to have in mind. I mean, pretty strange. You don't see this that often, but yeah, I don't know. Was this like the case in the original edition? I have no idea. I have to check that out. So yes, guys, I think these brothers did a great job in collecting and presenting these fairy tales here, in that they did bring about the classic fable-like narrative style and introduced to us many fairy tales which have now become nothing short of household names. Let's check some of those together. So I've marked several classic tales and several not that well-known ones, but we'll come to them in a minute. Let's first check the classic ones. Yeah, so for example, Rapunzel or Rapunzel, I believe, in German. Yeah, so everyone knows this story of the beautiful maiden who made it possible for the prince, it was, or I don't know, hero, to save her by climbing up her hair. So really a classic tale, I would say. It's not that long as well. I mean, that's another feature here. The tales are several pages long, so it would be very easy to read them in one sitting, to read one or several of them in one sitting. Yeah. Okay, let's check what I've marked further. Yeah, so Hansel and Gretel, for example, everyone has heard of that as well. So yeah, it first came to be known through the fairy tale collection by the brothers Grimm. So kudos to them. Hansel and Gretel. The witch house, right? I mean, all of the beloved childhood stories are here. Yeah. Let's check some other ones. What do we have here? Little Red Riding Hood. Right? Rotkäppchen in German. Little Red Riding Hood. A bit on the short side. I would have expected it to be a bit longer, but it is what it is. Yeah, this one I haven't marked, but I really liked this one as a child. So the City Musicians of Bremen, this one I really liked. You know, what child doesn't like animals or pets, right? So this one is about several animals, farm animals. They are a donkey, a dog, a cat, and a rooster. So as they grow old, they are about to get discarded by their landlord, right? So I don't know, he would not feed them anymore, or whatever you do with animals which are no longer productive or no longer fit to serve you. So they band together and they decide to become musicians in the free city of Bremen. Like, what else, right? I mean, a crazy premise. I really liked it as a child, and I would like it again, I would say. But halfway to Bremen, like from their farm to Bremen, they come across this cottage, which is like a hideout for a band of thieves. Through some like interesting, unusual means, like making sound, etc., they manage to chase out the thieves and take over their cottage. So they live the rest of they live the rest of their lives in the cottage, like safe and sound. And that's like more or less the happy end. So yeah, pretty wacky story, but pretty interesting one. I really liked it as a child. Okay, let's check some other stories as well. What have I marked here? Oh, we'll come to this in a minute. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Yeah, another one, Schneewittchen or Snow White. Like, can you have a more classic story than these guys? I would say this one is worth a read, especially nowadays when some like big evil corporations like Disney are trying to put a spin on it in this like movie remake. It's all of the rage nowadays as I'm like filming the video with this Snow Brown thing, like this Snow Brown absolute debacle.
There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
I didn't watch it. I will not watch it, of course. I don't plan on giving my hard-earned cash to such an unscrupulous, woke, and frankly evil corporation as Disney has become. So I would say it's better to simply get the original Brothers Grimm, whether in like German or English or in your mother tongue, and simply read and enjoy the story. I believe you will get more enjoyment in reading the story than watching that crap which Disney puts out there. So that's that. I won't go more into detail. They don't deserve it. Won't go more into detail about like Disney's remakes. They don't deserve it at all.
Everything woke turns to shit, okay? It's true. It's true.
I'll just say that I'm happy that it seems like this woke episode of humanity is on its last leg, so it's almost over. So I'm very happy we have that behind us. So this is the real thing, guys. This is the real McCoy. This is the real stuff. Read it, cherish it, enjoy it. You see, you have like this original like songs, Spieglein, Spieglein an der Wand, wer ist die schönste im ganzen Land? Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is fairest of them all? So this is where this originated. Great stuff, guys, great stuff. Some further like songs, etc. I mean, further verses. Great stuff, guys. I will really love this book. I'm sure of that. I'm sure of that. Okay. Moving on. I think this is the last classic one I have marked. I think so. Yes. So, Rumpelstiltskin. Who the hell is that? Rumpelstiltskin in English, right? So I've marked this one as a classic, but it might as well go into the macabre section of the stories. So it's pretty dark. It tells of a lady in need. I mean, she is in the middle of some problems, like, I don't know, she's been locked up, etc. So this gnome character, this Rumpelstiltskin, appears out of nowhere seemingly and helps her out, but at what cost? Like at what cost? When the time comes, he wants to take her firstborn child, unless she can guess his name. He didn't introduce himself at the beginning, of course. She doesn't know his name, that it's like this weird and wacky name. But I believe at the end she does manage to find out his name. She pronounces it, and then this evil gnome disappears, and so she and her child are safe and sound. Okay, so much for the classical tales. My childhood memories tell me that there were many dark and even, I would say, macabre tales that really took me off guard when I read them for the first time as a child. Maybe because I was just a child after all, I don't know. It will be interesting to re-explore them. Yes, so, but I think there are many like pretty dark stories not fit for a child, I would say. But now that I'm no longer one, I think I will enjoy them even more. So let's check some examples together. Yes, look at this thing. The story of the youth who went forth to learn what fear was. What in the world? Like, look at this illustration, you guys. I mean, this is something you would expect to find in an M.R. James collection. Like, I remember there was something very similar in Oh Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Lad. So, in that great ghost story. So, something similar here. Like what's the issue? Wow, look at this. I mean, I know illustrations are one thing and the text is a different thing. It doesn't mean that the illustrations are 100% that the illustrations 100% accurately portray what we have in the text. But nevertheless, I believe this to be a pretty macabre tale. So it tells of a young man who apparently has no fear. So there's that. So he goes into a haunted castle where he spends 3 nights. So the first night there is some apparition, some ghost. I don't know. I think he somehow dispatches of him, and he's still not scared. The second night he starts like a fire to get warm, like a fire indoors. Not a good idea, but hey, I don't know. Maybe this castle was like only built out of stone and mortar, so non-flammable. I don't know. It's a story. It's only a fairy tale after all. So yeah, he builds this fire. He gets warm, and then all of a sudden, dead bodies start dropping out of the ceiling. Look at that illustration. Look at that. How crazy that is. So dead bodies start dropping down. He thinking that these are some, I don't know, poor homeless people in need of some warmth. He puts them near the fire, but they, being dead, they simply, they are stiff and irresponsive. Their clothes start catching fire. So then I believe he beats them up and throws them away, saying how irresponsive of them to let themselves get caught on fire. Yeah, so again, he doesn't learn what fear is. I don't know, this is maybe a different night here where some apparitions are at a table, at a dining table. And then I believe the third night, there are some evil, I don't know, whether physical or spectral animals. So these are the cats from my intro. And what ends up happening is I believe he befriends them. Haven't read this story in a while. I only read some synopsis, so that's why I'm a bit unsure, but I will fix that in the future. So I plan to read this whole collection, right? But yeah, so he overcomes the third night as well without getting harmed, and he in the end ends up not learning what fear is. So it's somewhat of a both dark, macabre, and humoristic story. It is what it is. But yeah, it's good to know that there are such stories as well. And if you have children, I would say, yeah, you should watch out which of the Brother Grimm's tales they are allowed to read. Yes, so next up, we have a story called Godfather Death. Wow, can you believe it? So this is about a poor family man. He has 10 something children. So the youngest child being born, he knows that he cannot sustain it. So he has no money to feed it, to properly feed it, clothe it, all of the things which come with being a father and caring for your children. So he plans on finding a godfather for the child. So I believe in that older culture, a godfather would be not only someone who would christen the child, so give a name to the child, but also take care of it, or in some scenarios, I don't know, take care of it or sponsor it maybe. So both God and the devil come up as candidates. The man denies them the godfather role for various purposes. I think that it was as for God, he says, he tells him that, oh, you God, you let people suffer, and you allow there to be evil in the world. Go figure. I mean, we won't get into a theological discussion here on why that is wrong, on why that is wrong point of view on so many levels, but it is what it is. So that's why he doesn't want to make God his child's godfather. Then the other candidate is the devil. The man accuses him of being a liar, so he's not fit. Says to the devil, "You're not fit of being a godfather to my child because you are a liar." And then in the end, death becomes the child's godfather. So a very weird, macabre tale, guys. I will reread it definitely, and will update you in a later video, I think. Yeah, but yeah, would you like your child to read something which has these illustrations and where the text, at least in part, reflects these illustrations? Like, I wouldn't want that. So yeah, but as an adult, I would say I would enjoy such tales. Why not? Yeah, this is the one. Look at that, guys. Isn't that nightmare-inducing? Isn't that nightmare-inducing? Like, that is something straight out of an M.R. James story. I remember there was this one story called The Mezzotint in the M.R. James Ghost Story collection. One of the scariest ones, I have to admit. So there was a very similar illustration with like a corpse-like, emaciated, absolutely frightening looking person. So that's something similar. I wouldn't expect to see such an illustration in a fairy tale book, but hey, it is here. So what kind of story is this? We translate it into Gambling Hansel. So this tells the story of a lad. I went with a British English there. Yeah, a lad named Hansel who is a master gambler, let's put it that way. He even manages to trick death himself to get it to climb on this tall tree, so death is unable to get down for 7 years, during which no person on earth dies, the story goes, right? So then I believe he goes to hell and even outplays, even defeats in card games, in gambling, the devil and its minions, and his minions. So there's that. Let's check out the illustrations, guys, because I find them very interesting. I would say they are a story in themselves. Like there are, as we saw earlier, 444 illustrations throughout the book. I am no expert in arts, but I believe these would be what we call pencil illustrations, right? I'm pretty sure they are, like hand drawn. As we saw, they appeared. They first appeared in 1906. Definitely, they didn't have like computers at the time, let alone AI as we do now, for better or worse. So of course, hand drawn illustrations. Some of them are pretty simple, like this one. So I believe we call this line drawing. Feel free to correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong. Like, you have only the outlines of the characters or of the shapes. Like, very basic, I would say, like line drawing. Like, here is the cat and there are no shadows, there is no texture at all, so pretty basic. I would say still good illustrations, but pretty basic ones. But then you also have illustrations such as this, where the artist has tried to portray texture. So again, this must be like pencil drawing, but then there is like texture, right? You can tell that much more effort has been put into this illustration than in something like this, right? Another good example of a more detailed illustration would be this one. So the artist has tried playing with shadows, right? There is much more texture, like here on the door, I believe we call this lintel, right? On the relief here of the, let's say, heraldic symbol. So much more texture, much more detail. So it's a mixed bag. Some of the illustrations are more basic. Some of them are much more detailed. But I find them to be pleasing, all of them, to be honest. Another aspect I enjoy analyzing when I'm looking into illustrations is the material culture presented in them. So here in many of the illustrations we have a clearly medieval material culture represented. Like you will see kings and queens living in castles, towers, right? Then here we have a jousting match, for example. I mean, this couldn't be like this could be late Middle Ages at the latest. But then we also find illustrations such as these, where I believe siege of a town or a fortified town or a fortress is being portrayed, and from the looks of it, this is, I would say, 17th century warfare, like early modern period warfare. You see how people are clothed, so no more like armor, etc. Cannons, more advanced types of cannons, etc. Like then we also have something like this, like musketeers. I believe this would be like on a hunting sortie or something, like with a, what would this be, a musket or a carbine, then a straight sword, like I would say 17th and even 18th century fashion and weapons. Here we even see people with three-cornered hats. I believe these were like popular in the 18th century. So yeah, this is like rather a mixed bag of material culture we're witnessing in these illustrations. Now, what is that supposed to mean? I mean, it can also be a case of artistic freedom on the part of the illustrator, this Otto von Ubelode. I mean, licentia poetica, as we say in Latin, like artistic freedom. He's free to illustrate the stories as he sees fit. Now, whether there is some basis in the stories for one time period over the other, or whether in some stories, or whether some stories take place in a certain time period and other stories take place in another time period, I don't know. I would say maybe vaguely so. Let's not forget that these are tales after all. This is fiction, and even more so, fairy tales. We cannot expect any historical accuracy, but again, nevertheless, it would be interesting to revisit these stories now as a grown-up person who's interested in history, among other topics. So it would be interesting for me to revisit them and, among other things, check out what is the at least approximate time period these stories take place in. So I'm hoping to find out more about that and many more aspects. With one word, I'm looking forward to rediscovering these fairy tales now in this good-looking, elegant, single-volume hardcover edition. If I find some particular story worth making a video about, I will surely make one. Otherwise, I might make a general follow-up video once I've read, let's say, a substantial portion of the book, or once I've finished it. Why not? I'd also like to hear your opinion, though. Have you read any of the stories, any of the fairy tales by the Brothers Grimm? And how did you find them? Do you happen to have any interesting physical edition of their stories, such as this one, whether it be in German, English, or any other language for that matter? I would be very happy if you could write down in the comments. I would be happy to find out about other editions as well, like in other languages. I know that these fairy tales are popular worldwide, and with a good reason, I would say. So yes, drop me a comment down. Drop me a comment down in the comment section. I would be happy to read and respond. Drop a like if you liked the video. Check out some of my other videos if you think you would find them interesting. And I would be very happy if you could subscribe and help me grow here on YouTube. See you in the next video, and until then, remember, the Backwater Librarian guides you through the obscure pathways of literature. Thank you for watching and pleasant reading.